welcome to Unlatched Mind. This is Vinny. Today we'll be talking about addiction, primarily drug addiction. My guest today is Dr. Ahmed Moustafa. Ahmed is an associate professor in cognitive and behavioral neuroscience over at Western Sydney University. He's conducted a bunch of interesting studies that we'll talk about a little bit. We'll dig into kind of the heredity versus environment discussion. You know, whether someone's addictive personality, primarily drug addiction, is programmed into their brain, or whether it's more environmentally influenced. So, and there's that debate's been going on for generations. But so we dig into that a little bit, and really, there's the stigma around drug addiction. Is it justified? If a person is truly subject to their own neurochemistry and has less control over this addiction than some of the stigma would imply, then is that stigma even justified? So, for those that have personal experience with addiction, these discussions can be sensitive. They pull on your heartstrings. At the same time, that there's debate around certain angles of it, but I think like most controversial conversations, I think you approach it with an equal balance of intellectual curiosity and compassion, and I think you tend to be okay. So I think we did that. I hope you agree. But with that, I give you Dr. Ahmed Moustafa. Well, Ahmed, I appreciate you coming on. I definitely appreciate your time. So we'll talk about addiction today. So, just for the listeners, I found you online. I forgot exactly what I was Googling, but, addiction for me has been, I have some personal history with addiction, not myself personally, but, close family and friends. So it's always been a topic for me that's just kind of, been close to home. And I think it's interesting because I feel like there's two main sides to it. There's the science, there's the data. What does the data show? You know what I mean? And that's not always congruous with personal experience. So, when I reach out to folks like you, and I really like to get that, what is the data showing here? Are addicts just weak? Are addicts just not... Obviously, that's not. None of us believe that, but there's elements of those questions that roll around in my mind. So, for me, I always enjoy getting what does the science say, and that's where folks like you come in. So I appreciate all the studies that are happening, and just prepping for this, just researching some of the studies that you had sent me. I think they're just super interesting. But I have plenty of questions. So, where were you studying now? You're what university you at?
Right now, I'm at Western Sydney University. So I'm an
Okay.
associate professor of behavior and cognitive neuroscience. At Western Sydney University,
Okay. Very cool.
and I'm based at two department. One is social sciences and psychology. The other one is it's called Mark's Institute for Brain and Behavior and Development. So it has a neuroscience aspect as well.
Right. Now, is addiction? I mean, is just that one facet of your interest, or is that, or is it a primary interest of yours?
It's it is one facet of my interest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the moment it's kind of my primary research area.
Okay.
I mean, I do some other kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you do addiction research, you will also see that, it's kind of related to other things, as we have discussed before. I mean, PTSD is an addiction, sometimes go hand in hand.
Right.
Depression and addiction are related, and anxiety and addiction are related. uh, so
Right.
often when you
Right.
do research, you start researching something, and it kind of lead to something else, and so forth.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah. The more you dig into this stuff, the more you realize. I think that we just don't understand the human brain nearly as much as you would think we would at this
it's
point.
it it's true. Yeah, this is kind of things I'm struggling with every day. We don't really understand much about the brain, and
Right.
it's
Right.
a
Right.
bit disappointing.
I mean, is
but we
that?
to try our best.
I mean, do you? I mean, you obviously you're in this world. Do you feel like has there not been enough focus on it? Is there not been enough funding, or is it strictly that this brain thing is super freaking complicated? Like, is it that simple? Yeah, I mean,
No, there have been a lot of research and funding and work on this area. I mean, you're based in Washington D.C. I mean, NIH is like next door to you, right?
right,
And
right,
there's a lot of research happening at NIH. But it's a complex problem. I mean, every So I'm gonna say the word addict here
Mm-hmm.
through our discussion. I mean, literally speaking, like when we write our paper, like research papers, it's kind of a bit of an offensive term. So I hope no one can take it like really offensively. Usually have to like individual with like substance use disorders, but it's too long. So for short, we just use the word addict.
Sure. No, I appreciate that
Anyway,
clarification. I mean,
I
yep,
hope I
yep.
hope, I hope it's not like offensive or anything. We don't
No,
mean
no,
any like
no.
oh
I yeah.
those addicts out there, they're terrible people.
No,
It's
no,
not
no.
meant like anything like that.
If anyone's listening to our
So back to
discussion
your
and doesn't realize
yeah
that that's not in any way the intent, then I think they got to re-examine themselves. So,
yeah
so we're not worried about that for sure.
yeah. So I mean, addiction is complex because of so many things. First, like sometimes say I meet people. Oh, I tell them, oh, I do addiction research, and oh, did you find a treatment or what's happening?
Right.
But I mean, it's not like that easy. First thing, I mean, just look at many different levels of research questions. First. It's like we have the different substance, right? And
Mm-hmm.
each one of the substance affect the brain differently. We have like I mean heroin, cocaine, different kind of like methamphetamines, we have nicotine, alcohol, etc., etc. All these things are like
Right.
can be like can be abused, can be addictive, and they all work very differently on the brain. And you have other factors like some of them like are available to the people, some are not really available to people.
Right. Right.
You have
Right.
also like social factors, some are like socially acceptable, like I mean like it's this like alcohol in some cultures.
Sure.
Smoking is like some kind of in between I don't like maybe alcohol and marijuana
Right.
in terms of social sorry, acceptability.
Right. Right. Right.
Sorry
No,
about
you're right. There's a million
so I
different
mean
facets to this thing. It's a multi-pronged
yeah,
problem for
so that's
sure.
why it's not really about an issue of funding. There's a lot of research and funding in this area, but each one, I mean research tend to focus so I have been doing mostly doing heroin and alcohol research. There's some other research labs mostly do cocaine research, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
etc. That's what it's a complex problem.
Right. Oh, for sure. For sure. So of this, I mean, so that's a really good segue and really good intro. I mean, of the studies you sent me, I think there's about four of them that I want to touch on. Now, and I, so one of the first ones I think is focused on episodic future thinking. So now we chatted
Yeah.
about this a while ago, and I mean, could you summarize what that study was actually set out to resolve?
Yeah, so this study I did, I think like 2 years ago or a year ago, under students of mine, and the focus here was the main idea about, I mean, about addicts is that they're mostly focused on the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so we kind of notice that when we talk to uh, patient at the clinic. So I do testing with the heroin addicts and patient also with alcoholic problems at some hospital and clinic here in Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
um, so when you talk to them, you kind of notice that they're always focusing on today's issues or tomorrow after your maximum a week. They
Right.
wouldn't
Right.
be they will not be really planning for the future or career career what I'm gonna do with my career I mean next few years
Right.
or I plan to buy a house or do this and that so we find that actually this study we start collaborating with some few people and friends who actually came up with this cognitive task. And the idea is we give people few words and we ask them just talk about them, things holiday, health, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and we see what they will say. So if you ask someone, and in most of the so one thing I have to clarify, on most of the studies we do, we recruit two groups of people, a group of patient with
Mm-hmm.
addiction patient, and another group who don't have any addiction problems. This allow us to see the difference between them.
Right. Right.
Okay, so we did that, and we found that when you ask people without addiction about future episodic memory, they will generate more details. They have really thought about it. was like, oh, health wise, I'm supposed to do this, I should do that. And
Right, right,
holidays, they will have like ideas and issues they would be discussing. But with patient with addiction, they didn't say much.
right.
For them, like they didn't even think about this kind of thing. They don't really think about a holiday or what I'm gonna do in Christmas or something.
Now,
That's like not part of their life
right.
plans.
Now, these
Yeah.
folks, are they in the ones that are in the addiction group? Are these folks that are in the middle of a? I mean, are they clean at the time? Are they in the middle of are they? Are they high? Or what is their state when they're being asked this? Are they?
Okay. So they come to the clinic to take methadone.
Okay.
Methadone is yeah. I mean, there has been a lot of debates about methadone whether it works or not. The idea is like to take methadone, it gives them some kind of a high. So methadone should be like kind of a replacement to
Right.
heroin.
Right.
Okay, it works in a very similar way. It also it's an opioid agonist, should activate like your opioid receptor in the brain. It should give you the same kind of high you get from heroin, but the report people say it's not really the same. I mean, you don't really get it is similar, but not exactly
Right.
as effective or as strong as heroin.
Right. It's
Uh,
a safer alternative, I guess.
but
Right. That's ultimately the goal.
yeah, they still they do like it. I remember one time a patient. Sorry, tell me if I'm going off topic. By the way, I'm just
No, no.
remembering things. I'm like maybe.
This is
Yeah, I had
great.
this patient come
Yep. This is great.
to the clinic, to the hospital, and so actually actually methadone is actually really really good. I mean, it's like kind of like heroin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, kind of, right? And he came to the clinic and he went to the nurse. I was there also like testing some patient, and he really want to get his methadone shot. She's like, "Oh, you had it in the morning. You can't really have it twice." And he just got so angry, and he was trying hard to like kind of fool them
Mm.
to get other, like to get methadone again.
Right.
And
Right.
I just didn't allow him. But I mean, he was so angry that like, he was really dying for it. So this is like yeah, it's for them. It's kind of like heroin. However, by talking to the patients who are on methadone, they are actually still also on heroin. Okay,
Right.
uh,
Right. Yeah, I noticed that in some of your notes.
they don't really quit. Yeah.
Right. Hmm. Interesting. So going back to that question, so these folks are in a semi high state on the methadone when they're going through this test.
Uh, yeah, but I mean, sometimes we test them either before they taking their methadone or after,
Hmm.
but we didn't see any major difference.
Yeah.
So the idea whether yeah,
Yeah, no, really what I was
I think
getting at there was some, I always think about these things in kind of the chicken or the egg type issue where, are these folks that have, I would say, that have less, episodic future thinking and just to define that term, but sorry, episodic future thinking, just to find that term for the listeners, just so because we keep mentioning it, I want to make sure that.
so episodic future thinking is thinking about future events. So it's more like imagine yourself in a future
Right, right,
scenario. What would be like? So an example is like uh, like say imagine now you're on holiday in Paris. What would you do?
right, right,
And then you can talk about details of things like that. It's kind of like the opposite. We often think about episodic memory as like when you get things from your memory, but from like past events. Like
right,
oh, a year ago I was doing this and this maybe with my family. We were like I don't doing etc. and Christmas things like that.
right, right.
But future is the other way around. Like it's not in the past. It's like kind of like the opposite. Instead of
Yeah,
going back in the past, you go in the future.
right, right, and it makes sense, right? I mean, if I'm going to take this substance, or if I'm gonna work out, or if I'm gonna eat this food, or if I'm gonna spend all this money on something I shouldn't, and I feel like it's an obvious term. I just wanted to kind of pretty formally define it, just so there's no one scratching their head listening. But
Yeah.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Where like to my just what I was just saying, those examples of if I'm going to eat this food or spend this money on a car that I don't need, good episodic future thinking would
Yeah.
make me say, well, don't buy it, idiot. You can't afford it, and it's gonna just make your life miserable for the next whatever 3, 4, 5 years paying it off. Just because you want to impress some people that you don't even know or care about. So
Yeah. I mean,
it makes a lot of sense, and
um,
and I guess my question was more going. are these folks maybe if you if you could rewind, those folks, you get like because this group, you like you said, had a group of addicts and a group of quote unquote non-addicts. If you could rewind the entire timeline to when these folks were, say, I don't know, 15 years old, making up a number, when maybe drugs hasn't entered their lives
Yeah.
yet, would they have general personality traits that would exhibit the same type of results? Where the group that became addicts just were the type that maybe didn't really think of the future. They were just living in the living in the now people type of personalities. Or is it that those, if you could have taken that sample, would you see that it was just a mixed bag, and then later on these folks were, some of them got on drugs, became addicted, and then that addiction and that high more or less caused that state of reduced future thinking. It's almost like the chicken or the egg thing that I kind of go back to in my head. I'm not sure if, I don't think that study touched on that, but I'm just not sure what your thoughts about that would be.
No, actually, we didn't. It's an excellent question, actually, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not easy at all. Yeah, this kind of well, okay. Often in science, all this kind of chicken egg questions are very hard to answer,
Mm-hmm.
because it requires a whole different methodology and just to be able to answer this. To do this kind of study you mentioned, at first, I don't think anyone who has really addressed or answered this question. To answer this kind of question, I mean, you are like, I mean, sorry, you are right. You have to go back to people who are like, 15 or so.
Right,
I'm
right,
not sure why you mentioned 15 though. We have some addicts, I mean, at a side point who are actually started like, way like when they're 9, 10 and things like that.
mm,
Anyway,
gosh,
first, that's the first thing. We don't even know at what age to start, right?
right,
Let's say like let's like maybe early teens, and we look at like some kind of personality traits, and then you have to do like longitudinal study to follow them up. I don't know, for like 10, 20 years, and then you see like it could be, yeah, it could be like their personality trait, like these people who like really focus on, always focus on the present, or like the like like the reward or
right,
happiness at the right or this moment, will be the one who are more likely to abuse drugs. That's possible.
right,
Or it could be the other way around. But again, to answer your question, you have to do a longitudinal study, again, to follow people for 10, 15, 20 years or so. And doing so is not easy scientifically for
sure,
practical reasons.
yeah,
First, like, you need a big sample. People move out of city, go somewhere else. And there's always something like in dropout rate. People like, you can maybe start with like 100, the sample of 100 people. 2 years after, they are not there. They
right,
move to a different hospital, they are not there. You don't have enough sample to do your statistical analysis. It's not easy.
for sure, right,
And this is in general, by the way, not only about anything that require longitudinal study to address a chicken and egg kind of questions,
right, right,
or causality questions, are not easy in science.
right, right. Yeah, the causality is exactly that. That's the best word for it. That's exactly what I was circling around. Like, what's causing what here? Yeah, and you're right.
Yeah.
You need a large sample set, right? For any study, you can't do it with 10 people or 20 or even
Yeah.
100. I mean, ideally, you'd have thousands, and you'd really be able to, because there's going to be noise in that data, like any study. Um,
Right.
so, yeah, it's interesting. So now the next. You mentioned, we talked about, I brought up the age 15 just because I was trying to pick a number that was, hopefully before, folks would be exposed to drugs and whatnot. But it's just so sad. You mentioned the 9 years old thing, and I've seen it. So it's kind of it's horrific how
Yeah.
early these problems start. But now going back to that, one of the other studies we had chatted about was how childhood trauma leads to this world for addicts. And I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what the controversies are in the with the studies and whatnot, and what what some science says about X, Y, and Z, but it seems like there's consistency 100% across the board that childhood trauma is definitely a precursor to a lot of folks becoming addicted later in life. I think is that pretty much a true statement that there's always something there, or at least in a majority of the cases.
The- yeah, I don't want to say always like it's a kind of a
Hmm.
tough thing. You have to be careful. I've tried to be like careful with the wording.
Sure, fair
I
enough.
would
Yep.
say I don't say, yeah, most if yeah, I would say most of the addict, especially actually heavy drug users. By heavy drug user, I mean heroin, cocaine, the heavy drugs,
Right.
or or the other kind of cooked drugs,
Mm-hmm.
like a mix of different things, like methamphetamines and things like that, which is even worse than heroin and cocaine. Yeah, we see. And also, again, we kind of notice this just like kind of by observations, but while working with patients, we're talking to them, and some patients start like crying and talk about some kind of traumatic things happened to them when they were kids
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, and yeah, that can be a problem. And by the way, it doesn't have to be like a heavy like it doesn't have to be like like a sexual abuse. It can be like parental
Right.
neglect.
Right. Right.
Their parent didn't really spend so much enough time with them, taking care of them.
Right.
You know what I'm
Yeah, no,
saying?
it could be a lot more
All this
seemingly
factor.
benign where,
Yeah,
well, hey, mom and dad were working all the time and there was an emptiness left from this child, and yeah, and these real world things that, right, right. I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah,
because your study actually, and this was the next kind of topic, but related, I mean, your study kind of got into it a little bit. It broke down kind of I guess, two types of trauma, right? The interpersonal and the non interpersonal.
yeah,
Can kind of summarize what that really was? Because I think that's an
correct.
interesting distinction.
Yeah, this is actually also, again, we find so again, I didn't actually make up the scale, the this distinction. It was done before in the PTSD literature.
Okay.
Okay, and I found it actually, well, that's quite interesting distinction. I mean, me and my students, we can do like similar thing. The distinction has to do with uh, they were talking about like different kind of traumas. Okay, in the field of PTSD, people talk about like again, different kind of traumas. It can be like a car accident, it can be like a hurricane, earthquake, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
or it can be like sexual abuse, domestic
Right.
violence,
Right.
and things like that. Uh, so people think, okay, well, yeah, people can be like exposed to trauma and develop PTSD or traumatic memories and problems and things like that. Uh, but the question, are all traumas created equal? Are they all the
Right.
same? Uh, so from the research was done in PTSD. Uh, Sorry, I can't even remember the author's name, but I have the paper somewhere
Mm-hmm.
in my computer. But what they found actually that, well, traumas like inflicted by people are way worse, and they have like a bigger effect on us than something actually like done by nature or not by people.
Right. Yep.
Does
It's
that make
exactly what I would
sense?
expect. Yeah, and I was just curious if that's what
Yeah.
the data showed. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So people actually like say that some people develop trauma after experiencing like an earthquake, or in India after the tsunami. Some people develop uh, also PTSD
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And yeah, so that can happen, but of course it's like it's not as strong. The percentage of people who develop PTSD in this kind of situations are way smaller than the number of people who develop PTSD after experiencing abuse by sexual
Right. Right.
abuse, right? Especially, and even more by someone you trust more. So by a family member, by a neighbor, that's way more even than a stranger.
Yeah, I mean, it
Okay?
makes total sense. I mean, I think it also draws, highlights, I guess, us as humans, where we need each other. We're tribal. We need our loved ones. We need our family. We need community. And
Yeah,
when that part of our world betrays us, it just wreaks havoc with us, right? And so that makes complete sense to me. And it's
yeah,
I'm glad to see the data reflects that, because in my opinion, it would be common sense that would be the reality there. When a parent abuses a child, just whether it's sexual or even verbal. I mean, it could really just, and especially a developing mind, right? That's the reality. I,
yeah,
I feel like a hurricane coming. Yeah, that's frightening and scary as all hell. But it's like you hopefully you and your family are fighting the hurricane together, so you still have that. You still feel that closeness and that
yeah,
meaning and that purpose.
yeah,
It's just
yeah.
it's so that's interesting. Now PTSD is so often correlated with war and wartime and soldiers coming back. Where would war fit? Is it?
Correct.
I mean, I feel like that's non-interpersonal, or is there some hybrid? Or
Um, I'm not sure who are like, I mean, I think it, well, it's probably also non-interpersonal. It's like, again, I think it's not about, it is more about like, like what is actually causing the trauma
Right.
itself. It doesn't mean like, who was involved in the trauma itself.
Right. Right.
So, and especially if it happened really, really close, if the person was like really right there. I mean, the same thing also with car accidents. Is it personal interpretation? Well, it's like, it's like, yes, it was done by a
Right.
person,
Yeah. Right.
right? But usually when you see people who experience trauma after car accidents, they often afraid more of cars and things like that. We're hearing stories about cars and things like
Right.
that. So it's more interpersonal
Mm.
than
Mm.
personal. I mean, at least the person was not really there doing something bad to you, like on
Right. Right.
purpose.
Yeah.
Does that make
Absolutely. No.
sense?
Absolutely.
Honestly, well, I didn't think about it before, but I mean, I mean, you're asking good question, by the way. I mean, you should be a scientist, by the way.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, you're asking a good question because I didn't think about. Because first of all, this concept actually there are not that many research studies on this. I mean, even though it seems like a very important distinction, we should actually always discuss it. But I have only seen it on only one
Right. Right.
study, and we did like a follow up, and but it was done in PTSD, and we did it on patient with addiction, and we found similar
Mm.
things. And again, interpersonal traumas are more associated with the heavy drug use than non-interpersonal ones. But based on the point we have been discussing now, I mean, maybe it's not black and white. It could be like, all kind of shades of like, how personal it is. Maybe things like, like sexual abuse, like it's like heavily personal, and things like, at the other side of like, would be like have things like, like hurricane, which like no people
Right.
involved, and in between you have things like, car accident, yeah, someone involved, but maybe not directly, or no, you don't really see the person
Right.
who's
Right.
doing it, or I don't know, what I'm saying,
Well, like
like,
everything else in this
it
world,
could
like
be
kind of
like,
like we
yeah.
spoke about when we opened up. I mean, it's this the black. It's really not black and white. There's so many overlaps and interweaving of these forces and these issues. So it has to be a little of everything. I mean,
Yeah.
just to make it more complicated, of course, to make your job harder to figure this stuff out. But so the last study that you talked about, it was focused on a personality trait. I think you called it it was called intolerance of uncertainty. And I mean, it's along the same
Correct,
theme. And
yes.
could you summarize that study? And I think there was a couple of them. There was really two. I feel like studies that touched on the same thing. So
Yeah, we did few work, and so also we did also work in PTSD using the same kind of concept. So intolerance of uncertainty. So before I continue, when I talk about, when I'm teaching, if I mention the word sexual abuse and things like that, I always have to do like, like a disclaimer. I'm gonna
yeah,
mention
sure.
like, things like that. Is that any problem at all if I say the word sexual
Not at
abuse,
all.
or like,
This is an
talk about this kind
open
of, if I
forum.
use this
No, this is
terminology
an open
in
forum.
our.
Yep.
All right, so just to
Absolutely
make
no.
sure it's not, because in my teaching I have to be very, very careful when I
Oh, in
mention
in
terminologies
academia,
like
yeah,
that.
we don't have this. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
When I
Yep.
teach,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, I have, yeah. All right, so back to your point. Yeah, in terms of uncertainty, the that was okay. Well, let's just first talk a little bit about
Hmm.
uncertainty. Okay, we often think about like, there's many things in the future, can be uncertain,
Yep.
right? Like, I mean, as an example, but I mean, we often like do things uh hoping for some future goal, even though this is, uncertain. So like, I know you get married, and you hope you spend your whole life with your partner, but I mean,
Right.
you never know what's gonna happen, right? So it's uncertain. But I mean, at least like, you do your best and you try hard and just to get a
Right.
certain
Right.
kind of goal. I mean, you have kids. It's, you have kids, and you raise them. You try your best to raise them well, for hoping like, for they will turn out to be like, I don't know,
Right.
whatever,
Right. Like
like, but
yeah,
you know
contributing members of
good
society. Yeah.
good
Yeah. Yep.
people in the society.
Yep.
Exactly, yeah. But this is there's always an element of uncertainty of everything we do. Again, you go to university, maybe go to, you finish your
Mm-hmm.
university, blah blah blah, hoping you get a job, but
Yep. Yep.
you never know. Maybe you'll never get a job, as you was hoping for. But this kind of uncertain thing, um, so most people actually, like, who go to university, hope to get a job, I think we tolerate this kind of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's the meaning of it. We kind of, even though there's uncertainty inherent on most
Right.
things we do, as the examples I have mentioned now, we have to tolerate them and kind of live with it, because this is just it's
Yep.
part
Yep.
of life. I meet the person, like, who's like, I really want to marry and I'm hoping for the best, but you
Right.
never know what's gonna happen,
Yep.
right? The same. The same applies to all kind of examples we do, and that seems kind of like, uh, I don't want to say like right and wrong, but actually like kind of, I don't say like, yeah, that's a kind of expected kind of behavior, like, let's say like healthy kind of behavior,
Yeah, it's a
like,
healthy outlook. You would
if you focus
think
too
that
much on,
most
like,
people just understand that, hey, this is
yeah,
life, right? I mean, right. So it sounds like I'm guessing what you're getting at maybe is these folks, some folks don't view that uncertainty as healthy as others. Is that true?
yeah. So the issue with addiction is they are intolerant of uncertain
Hmm.
things. So when you talk to them, like, about life, about future, about things like that. By the way, it also brings us back also, like, the future
Hmm.
episodic thinking. It's actually kind of also related term. Again, when we tell patient, like, so we talk about, like, the future and things like that. They often have this, like, the uncertainty things. For them is like, oh, like, I don't want to deal with this. So, like, oh, I'll go to university and do this and that, and then,
Right. Right.
like, and you may never get a job. How you get to give a job, and why you even
Hmm.
do that? And for them, like, like, let's say, like, the 5% probability that you may not get a job, or I don't know, I don't know, your wife or husband might be like really bad, and
Right.
doesn't work, or kids turn out to be
Right. Right.
whatever, not
Yep.
as you expected. For them, like, this is the biggest focus. They always talk about this, like, the negative aspect of,
Right.
the decision,
Mm-hmm.
even though the chances is kind of very small. the they think a lot about it, uh, and they can't even take this decision to do
Right.
anything.
Right. Right.
So they, like, they are intolerant of uncertainty. They don't really want to, yeah.
Hmm. So again, that my head goes back to the
Tell
chicken
me,
or egg thing.
if I didn't
No, no, you
explain
did.
it very
Yeah, I
well.
think,
Yeah,
and I don't
yeah,
remember
yeah.
the details of some of the study, but I think, again, I just go, my head goes back to the chicken or the egg thing, where these folks just genetically pre-programmed to have less of a tolerance for uncertainty than folks without that don't develop addiction problems. Um, so because what I mean, as we're talking, it's almost like you start to see there's a lot of complexities to the brain that are pushing folks to want to fill some kind of void, either or to ease some kind of pain. Uncertainty can be pain. If I'm going to jump off this ledge into life, and I just look at it like a bleak palette of uncertainty, it's quite hard to get motivated. I mean, I guess it touches on depression, right? It sounds almost like and I don't know much about depression, but I'm sure you know more about that than I do. But if you're looking at the world and just see nothing but uncertainty, it's I feel like it'd be pretty. I feel like drugs would be an easy fix, because you
It's
just say, what's the point of going to school? What's
Yeah,
the point of
exactly.
working hard? What's the point of trying to find a mate? I imagine it just crushes a lot of the initiative one might take.
Right. I mean, and it is very related to depression. It's also very, uh, the same kind of also concept has also been done with a patient with depression reporting very similar results. They're also very intolerant
Hmm.
of
Yep.
uncertainty. Again, they don't want to deal with anything in the future that is uncertain. Yeah. And they completely try to avoid
Right.
that.
Right. So I guess so those like I said, those studies, I feel like They set a good backdrop, and like any study, they're just additional data points. And I don't know how large these data sets were. Like, are these studies were these thousands of folks? Were they dozens? What was the sample set?
We some we had hundreds, some less. It's not very easy to get many
Right.
patients to do the study. Sometimes even we test some of them, but the other issue is also is like we try to spend like at least an hour and a half with them or so to conduct the entire study because it involves few things. We do some part of it's like brain imaging, we collect like some skills about their background, they have been doing those for how long,
Okay.
etc., etc. Some of them like, just, like get tired halfway through. They're like, it's like, man, I'm sorry, I have to go. I don't wanna
Right.
keep
Right.
doing this, Uh, and when I study someone like when we do this trauma thing, as I mentioned, she started crying and she couldn't really
Hmm.
finish the test, and she
Right.
had to
Right. Right.
leave. Uh,
Yeah. You're touching on something that. Yeah. So you know yeah, because you're trying to help folks, or you're trying to get insight into folks that they themselves are in a compromised state, and maybe not all of them. I just can look at, hey,
right.
you're trying to, obviously your goal, you want to help folks, right? That's, you want to apply science to helping human beings. I mean, that's just talking to you over the, a few times that we've actually spoken. Most folks that focus on depression and PTSD, I feel like they just have a common, there's a certain compassion they just have, which is amazing. We all, everyone thanks folks like you for being in this world. So your goal is to, apply science to helping people, but your test subjects are, I feel like, are almost, not always, but many of them are in a compromised state. So the example you gave, someone couldn't finish the test, they started crying, walked out. I have personal experience with trying to help folks with PTSD, but folks with PTSD have they're compromised. So to help them, you almost have to,
Yeah.
it's just not a lot of extra work because they can't pull a lot of their own weight. They need, they need someone to be pulling them along, and it just makes it even yet another level of complication because they're not, again, they're compromised on some level.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure there's varying degrees of it as well, but um, yeah, that's amazing. So I mean, what do you think the next step is for addiction? I mean, are there what's like on the horizon? It's like if you ask the question, oh, what's the next thing with cancer research, and you see a lot of you see, oh, they're this close to a pill or this close to, with CRISPR, and there's all these different, genetic approaches to solving a lot of these diseases and whatnot. But how, apply that to addiction in this world, and is there something promising in your field, or something that you and your colleagues are getting excited about that you see on the horizon, or?
Um, really, to the best of my experience, so most of what I found was most of different kind of, all right, there are different kind of medication have been out. So the pharmacology part work in two different ways. Uh, One is to give you a
Mm-hmm.
replacement of the drug. Okay, so and kind of like pretty much like instead of like you go buy heroin or cocaine from the street, which is mixed with
Right,
10
right,
other things, I never know what's in it, and they're like, okay, like I don't want you to do that, because I'm concerned
right.
about like your health. So I'm getting something cleaner that
Controlled and regulated. Right, right, right.
work. Yeah. So this is one line of treatment of like to give like kind of like replacement therapy. So with the most famous one we know is like
Sure.
methadone, or buprenorphine for heroin, and for all other kind of drug you have something similar. I mean, for nicotine
Mm-hmm.
addiction, I mean like smoking, you have some also like different kind of like nicotinic agonists that give you some kind of same
Right.
kind of effect, uh, like a smoking, etc. And for cocaine, there's like also dopamine agonists, and etc., etc. But they don't really work. It's kind of like you give someone like some kind of replacement that to replace a
Right.
drug,
Yep.
right? But that doesn't really you know solve the big problems that people have in their lives. Uh,
Well, my skeptic thinking, and I don't. This, we might get on a tangent here, but pharmaceutical companies, they don't have the best reputation. Now they do a lot of
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals do a lot of good to us. Current medical science, I mean, is we don't want to throw that, certainly don't want to throw that away, but the whole pharmaceutical industry and the for profit nature of it, which everything is. I'm a capitalist. I realize I appreciate folks working their butts off to make a product to make money, because that makes everything better at the long run. I mean, it can go awry, and
Yeah.
there's certainly negatives to it, but in general, do you feel? I mean, and maybe this is getting to a tangent where folks in your field aren't really concerned about, because you're really just concerned about the science. But you just mentioned the list of drugs that are replacements. They replace the street drug. It is. I wonder. My skeptical view is, well, a lot of that, I don't know how much the pharmaceutical companies care about fixing the problem versus, oh, there's a street drug, well, we'll make a regulated drug, let them buy our drug. I don't want to believe that's entirely the case. I'm sure it is a little bit. I'm hoping that to some degree, and maybe that's not the pharmaceutical company's jobs. Maybe their job is to just make a profit, and if they're keeping people safer, then check the box and move on. I'm just hoping it goes beyond that, where we don't want to just keep folks high on a controlled substance and then just don't and forget about them. Obviously, folks like you and others are making sure that's not happening. But so the replacement drugs, and you even mentioned just a second ago, they're not really working. So besides, I guess, replacement drugs, what else is going on? Like you mentioned treatment of some kind. What's, and maybe it's just a limitation of what we do and do not know about the human brain yet. Um, so besides drugs, what's out there, what's coming, or
There are different kind of behavior treatments, uh, and some of them work and some don't. So the the one kind of treatment like I found a little bit promising. Again, it brings us back also to the future episodic thinking, which is actually known
mm-hmm.
as future assisted treatment. The idea is so basically, we bring back patient to the clinic, and we really talk to them like what do you really want to be like in the future. So try to bring them just try to not to always think about the present moment, when you're too much focused on the present, this is too much. Okay, try to
Right.
if you project yourself in the future some years from now, what would you like to be? By the way, and these things, are not as simple as this. It involve many different processes of getting to know. And I mean the clinician or the psychologist try to spend some time getting to know the patient, and they form some
Mm-hmm.
kind of uh, I don't want to say close relationship. That sounds a bit weird. But kind of like to know each other, kind of to try to
Sure.
learn
Right.
from the patient the kind of things that they're hoping to do when they were young and they want to do and things like that. And then that can be your starting point. Okay,
Right. Right.
so it requires a holistic treatment. First, so this one aspect of it. You bring people to tell them, okay, think about the future. What will you what have you, what would you like to be like in the future, or what did you like, what you were thinking when you were a child about your future, and maybe you try to bring back this again. And of course
Right.
it has the way it has been done. It's like really really gradually, like okay, like oh, I didn't even finish high school, or well, like let's
Mm.
start on that. What is need to get high school? Let's go into computer, let's go to the library, go onto a computer, look it up, what is needed, do the first step, come back next time, tell
Yeah.
me, oh, to go my high school, I need this and this and that. Do the step by step. It's easy to do it this way because every step becomes rewarding and kind of take you the next step. So that's one way aspect of treatment. There's
Yep.
also
Makes
the
sense for
social
sure.
aspect as well. There's also the social aspect as well. So there are different kind of treatment as well. The social aspects of addiction. Uh, I'm not sure if we have discussed this before or not, but big part of aspect is social. Uh, that when you become when people become start getting addicted, their friends and the people that their social life become people of like who do the same kind of things. So they
Right,
become
right,
friends with heavy drug users, and and become really really close, and they help each other. There are people like oh, like I want to go buy heroin. All right, just like, can you take care of my kid because I need to go to buy alcohol? Yeah,
yeah,
sure, I will
exactly,
take
yeah,
care of the kid. You need some
mm,
money, here it is, like. And they're really really supportive. They become really really close. uh, so I've read about some case studies that people actually they rejected to leave. They were homeless, living like the community of in homeless people. Also was similar minded, drug using people. Even though they
right,
were offered homes, houses to move to, they refused that. They don't know, why should I move a
mm.
house when
So
I
sad,
have all my friends and yeah,
right. Yeah,
and
I mean
family.
that's that. It's. I mean that's just. I mean it's heartbreaking to hear, but I can. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean you start surrounding yourself with folks that have similar. I mean you built a new family, right? Folks that understand you. They're
Exactly, yeah.
it's almost like you don't even look at it as a problem anymore, or like why would you go? I feel like the analogy is folks that go away to prison and they don't want to get out. Like now, I don't want to go to they get scared to go back to the real world. And you hear stories like that
Yeah,
where folks like, I'm going to get a job and go sit in an office. No, it blows your mind for someone like me or you, to hear that. But I feel like I can definitely see that. I mean, it's sad, breaks your heart because you see sometimes you're driving, you're at a red light, and you look over to the left. I mean, I'm here in Washington D.C. and we see it, and you just see it looks like a little village of folks that are with just living under a bridge, and they have almost a
yeah,
semblance of a community, and you just can't help but think, are they? I certainly don't think they want to be in that situation, but overall, they almost look like they're making it their new life, not thinking, how do I get out of this? It's just it's their reality. They have they've surrounded themselves with folks that are sharing sharing in their experience, and it's kind of like self fulfilling prophecy in a sense where it just kind of feeds on itself. That's just sad for sure.
exactly, yeah.
Mm.
And uh on top of that, also like their friends do not even encourage them to go seek treatment. So if you're negotiating, oh, like, oh, why you're doing this, you're gonna leave us and blah blah blah, things like that. In addition, the ones who have tried and have failed, and
Mm.
so on, that even make it even more complicated. Oh, why even try and blah blah blah, and even say, okay, why even if all right, if I got clean, I've recovered, what am I gonna do? I will have to face life now,
Right.
it's like, which is like very very complex, so like,
Yeah.
so this
No,
always have this all
it's.
this kind of like, yeah,
I
uh,
mean, so do you see a tie to these folks? Do you see a common thread where their family structures there's not much family support, or and I know that's a complicated question because you know again I've seen
sadly.
it on a lot of levels where the family may have been there for many 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 years, and then by the time maybe someone like you or see them or they're at the point of getting treatment, they've already destroyed those family relationships. So I just want to clarify for anyone listening where when I say this family's not there, I don't want to I don't want to make it seem like the family has turned their back on their loved ones because they just made a bad decision one day. It may have been decades of the addict or the person in the struggle that has pushed away all the family. So it gets complicated there, but I'm wondering if there, in your experience, is there a family dynamic? Is there a family support system surrounding these folks, or do you tend to see not much there?
Well, I mean, it depends, I mean, it varies from family to another. So I work with indigenous people here in Australia. So one time we have a center for indigenous health.
Mm,
They ask few people to travel to a rural area, in actually almost in the middle of Australia, where like many Aboriginal people live. Sadly, Aboriginal people in Australia, I think the same. I mean, the same like Native Americans or native
mm-hmm,
population in America and Canada, etc. They have a lot of problems with drug addiction, alcohol problem, and so on, right? Uh, so the people I've met there, They will live in a rehab center. They, like try to, get over their addiction problem, etc., etc. And actually, one of them told me that, yeah, I mean, he feels better being in the rehab center. He's like, he's able to take control of his life. But the problem, like, if he leaves and go back to his house, I mean, his parents also are drug users.
Oh man.
So
Hmm.
are many of his family and friends. So, like, if he go back and he see, like, other people using, it just kind of like, he cannot really handle this. He's gonna, like, you know get back to,
Right. Right. Yeah.
to drug using.
That's.
By the
I
way,
mean, that's sad.
that that's the other thing, like, about drug use. Anything that remind you of it,
Mm.
can, like, really, just like can bring it back again, like,
Right.
just like reminder of drug use, like, uh say, like, you used to, I don't know, like, smoke, like,
Right.
or drink alcohol in your, in your living room. So
Yep. Yep.
every time you go back to your living room, even though, like, you never, you're not, there's no alcohol there,
Mm-hmm.
you will just, like, you feel like, oh, I'm craving
It's
alcohol
a
now. So
trigger.
what's
Yeah.
happening?
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
So
Yep.
the
Yep. Yep.
context, like people, this kind of things, and for them, they have the same issues. Yeah,
Hmm.
they go back to community. It's not maybe just like, yeah, see people using drugs again, or even see the same people maybe who have used drugs with before, that can be a reminder.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
That's
that's why
that's
they
like
say you got to
I
break you got to break out and get new friends, get new. I mean, I don't know who said it a while ago, but it was it sounds mean, but someone said it was about fitness, and I think the guy said if you don't want to be fat, don't have fat friends. And it sounds like a horrible thing to say, but
it's
there's truth there, right? If you're with
yeah,
folks that like that lifestyle, they're going to be eating bad. They're going to be, they're going to be sedentary. I'm sorry, but it's true. The reality is
yeah,
you want to be fit, hang out with fitness people.
yeah.
If you want, if you want to, get better at, I don't know, learning about addiction, hang out with
It's a
you,
good point.
right?
Yeah,
And not, me. But so it's just how it works, right? Surround yourself with folks that you want to, that you want to
yeah.
aspire to. And if you want to break the drug habit, you got to, but to your point earlier, you do develop a sense of community, and there's,
Yeah.
I'm sure these
Can,
folks are compassionate with one another and love each other on some level. So it's not that simple of just
they
walking
are
away from you.
very supportive of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very supportive. I mean, I see them, so on a early morning before we do our testing, they come in the morning, they take their methadone,
Mm-hmm.
and how they come. I mean, they're drinking alcohol and they're sharing together. They talk to each other,
Right.
they know each other. They give each other, like, a sip of alcohol, and things like that. Yeah,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
you can see this some kind of, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Can
There's
I
a
say one thing? But
camaraderie.
before I forget,
Certainly.
I
Certainly. Yeah.
just remember a story that, I don't think I told this story before, but at the same time, when I went conduct this workshop in rural Australia, in a small town, an area called Burke. I'm not sure if American will know, but if you live in Australia, probably most people will know it. It's a rural area.
Okay.
Again, mostly has native, indigenous Australian, live in it. So when I went there, I did the workshop. I did a mistake, actually. So, first I was talking to them and talk about, like, addiction and how it happens and things like that. Like what we are doing now. And
Yep.
then I did a mistake, like, I was like, okay, I'm gonna show, like, do like a PowerPoint slides and tell you about, like, about our research, explain things to them, but
Mm.
using PowerPoint slides. And my first, I often, like, PowerPoint slide. I was like, first slide, I had, like, my name, like, where I'm coming from. I go
Right.
Ahmed Mustafa from university, blah blah blah. And I had the pic. I always put, like, a picture, like, of a drug using person, just like, kind of, oh, this is the topic is addiction, not
Okay.
something else. I just got it from off, Google image or something,
So this,
a
I'm
picture of
imagining this is a
someone.
person that's looking pretty down and out and not exactly happy.
What, sorry?
I'm the image
I didn't hear.
I'm picturing the image you had of of this user was probably a person looking pretty down and out and not
It
not
was
in the
like, yeah,
best shape.
it's someone, like, like, is injecting. Yeah,
Mm.
someone is injecting. Yeah.
Okay.
And once I put up, like, this is the first slide, and, like, oh, I'm doing myself. one of like there were like I don't know, maybe like 10, 15 people sitting there, like I was talking to them. I
Mm-hmm.
was not, so like please like take off this picture. I'm craving drugs right now, something
Oh,
like this. I
wow.
was like, please take it off. I cannot really deal with this. And man, I'm really sorry. And like, I
Wow.
just didn't, yeah.
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm an idiot. I mean, this is the kind of things I'm teaching people, and I'm doing this exact same mistake. I'm like, reminding them of it. Like
Right, right,
it was a
right.
stupid thing I've done. Anyway,
Well, I
uh,
mean, you certainly didn't
but
intend
that's
that,
a
and I'm sure you learned from it. So,
yeah, but that's the kind of thing like this is what that's really happened. It's like a picture of something like that. Like just like really make them crave, and it's like
hmm.
it's very very strong. I
Right,
mean,
right.
this is where craving just come from.
So when you say this might be a dumb question, but real quick, paint me a picture of what you're in a rural area of Australia. And you said it's Burke. Burke is the
Somewhere near Burke. Yeah.
okay, okay. And what am I? How rural is this? I mean, are we talking about small little homes? Are we talking about huts? Are we talking about big houses? I can't put an
It's
accurate picture
well,
in
it's
my head.
small little homes. I think honestly, I'm not sure if you pronounce it. It's called a Brorina. I'm not sure if I'm pronounced it correctly,
Okay.
but I can send you an email with the exact
Sure, I'll put that in the show
spelling.
notes for folks to look it up. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. And it's almost close to the border of Queensland.
Hmm.
It's just, and this area in Australia actually it's heavily indigenous people. I mean, if you're in Sydney or in Melbourne and things like
Right,
that,
right.
there's like yeah. I mean, yeah, you will see some indigenous population, but not that many. You go a little bit up north, toward Queensland and Northern Territories, and there's like it's heavy like you see more indigenous people.
Hmm. Okay, Ahmed. I mean, I think this is a good point to wrap this up. Um, it's a really good conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Fanny. Let's be in touch, huh?
You bet. You bet for sure.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ahmed. Bye bye. And that's it. Thanks for listening. See you next time.